And all of that is incredibly important, but Kamala Harris has had a terrible couple of days. In fact, they are remarkably bad because she keeps delivering unforced errors with only 27 days to go until Election Day. And these gaffes, these major missteps, are going to destroy her already fading candidacy. You see, Kamala has been flushed out of the dark, and she's being forced to do interviews and actually answer questions. And no matter how softball those questions, she just can't get it right. It's embarrassingly bad. So bad, in fact, her team is in panic mode and damage control because what she's doing is giving instant television commercials and massive amounts of political ammunition to Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. So let's go through a few examples of Kamala's very bad week. And it's only Wednesday. And just yesterday on The View, Kamala agreed and said she would not change a thing, not one thing from the past 3.5 years. This was an open question, a chance to say, this is how I'm different from Joe Biden. And she says quite clearly, she's not. Here it is.
Well, if anything, would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
There is not a thing that comes to mind that I would change. That's right, when asked point blank by Sunny Hostin of The View what she'd changed in the past 3 or 4 years, she said nothing. She would not change a thing. Can you believe that? From the disastrous failure of the Afghanistan pullout that left 13 Americans dead, to the wide open southern border, to the economy and the massive amount of inflation inflicted on Americans after she cast the tie-breaking votes on back-breaking policies, there's nothing she would change. And Kamala wouldn't change a thing because she believes in everything Joe Biden has done as president, despite the fact that she keeps trying to say she's not Joe Biden. And she has her own plans for her administration. Really? Really? Let's hear that one more time from The View because it needs to be perfectly clear. This woman has not one clue about what she would do as president that's any different than the guy that's in there right now. Listen.
Well, if anything, would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
There is not a thing that comes to mind. Now you've got it. There's no question that she cannot think of a single thing that she would do differently. Not one. By the way, that lines up perfectly with what Joe Biden said just a couple of days ago, too. He says Kamala has supported him and his reckless, dangerous policies every step of the way on everything. Joe says Kamala is fully on board with everything this administration has done. Every single thing. Here he is.
There have obviously been a number of crises that the country has been facing over the past several days with the hurricane, with the port strike, with the situation in the Middle East. Can you talk about how your vice president, who is running for the presidency, has worked on these crises and what role she has played over the past several days?
Well, I'm in constant contact with her. She's aware we're singing from the same song sheet. She helped pass all the laws that are being employed now. She was a major player in everything we've done, including passage of legislation which we were told we could never pass. And so she's been, and her staff is interlocked with mine in terms of all the things we're doing.
Her staff is interlocked with mine with all the things we're doing. There is no difference. There's no separation. There's no light between the two. And even the liberal media was pounding Kamala for being so shallow and vapid on this very important point. I mean, seriously, these are Republican campaign commercials that don't even need editing. They just write themselves anytime she's left alone with anyone asking questions and a camera. Pretty simple stuff. CNN hammering her on this point. Went for the throat that she is no different than Joe Biden and is incapable of saying anything differently. Listen.
Done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind.
Molly, what do you make of that?
I'm surprised, frankly, that she doesn't have more to say about this, given that
she and her campaign know that this is one of the main questions that voters have about her. And one of the main things she's been trying to establish as part of her candidacy is the idea that she would represent a break from the past 4 years, and to not be able to come up with something to say in that moment. She continues to not be particularly nimble on her feet in a lot of these interviews, and this is a very obvious question that gave her an opportunity, frankly, to differentiate herself in a way that would have made news, that would have answered, I think, the curiosity of a lot of voters who want to know how she would lead differently, and she's not very specific in laying that out, and she can't point to a decision she would have made differently, which, in an electorate that thinks that doesn't like the way this administration has led, and that doesn't like the track that the country is on, that may not be a very satisfactory answer.
I mean, it's a delicate dance.
Yeah. Just part of her no good, terrible, very bad day on the campaign trail. You see, the downward spiral began when she did a friendly interview on 60 Minutes with Bill Whitaker. Or at least she thought it would be friendly and easy, and 60 Minutes tried to edit it deceivingly, and they did. They've been busted for it. But the questions were not hardballs from 60 Minutes. Kamala is just not equipped to deal with any serious questions. She's certainly not equipped to be president of the United States. Kamala Harris is not a serious candidate. She is not a serious candidate. In fact, she was installed to replace Joe Biden without ever getting a single vote for the job from Democrats or anyone else. And on 60 Minutes, she floundered on basic, easy questions. She's not capable of doing any of this. And so about that gift nomination, this was the response. Listen.
Was democracy best served by President Biden stepping down and basically handing you a nomination? You didn't have to go through a primary process. You didn't have to fight off other contenders. That's not really the way our system was intended to work.
President Biden made a decision that I think history is going to show is rare among leaders, which was to put country before self. And I am proud to have earned the support of the vast majority of delegates and to have been elected the Democratic nominee. I am proud to have received the endorsement of leaders around this country from every background and walk of life to fight in this election over the next month for our democracy.
But I think this truncated process is why people think or say they don't really know who you are.
Look, I've been in this race for 70 days.
Yeah. And nobody knows anything. I'll be right back.